A devoted husband returns home late one night, only to find his world unraveling in the most brutal way. A single message, a shattered vow, and a confrontation that will change everything. But what happens when betrayal meets unrelenting fury? Some wounds heal, others leave scars forever. The air in the house was suffocating, thick with the kind of silence that only comes before devastation. Evelyn sat on the couch, her fingers trembling as they danced over the keyboard, her breathing shallow. The clock on the wall clicked past midnight. Daniel was late, again. She knew something was wrong. It wasn't just the late nights, the distant stares, or the sudden coldness in his voice. It was the gut-wrenching feeling clawing at her from the inside, a primal instinct screaming that something was deeply, terribly wrong. Her heart pounded as she opened his laptop, hands slick with sweat. She knew his password. Of course she did. Daniel always thought she was too trusting to check. The inbox loaded, and then she saw it. An email. From her. Aisha. His ex-wife. Thank you for my early birthday present. The shower afterward was nice. Evelyn felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. The room spun, the words burning into her skull. Shower afterward? She read it again, hoping she was imagining things. Maybe it was an inside joke, maybe she was overreacting. No, the truth was staring her in the face, laughing at her naivety. The rage that built inside her wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming. It was cold, calculating, and absolute. Her hands clenched into fists so tight that her nails dug into her palm, drawing blood. She barely noticed. She grabbed her phone and called him. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then he answered. Hey, I'm at work, what's up? Evelyn's voice was deadly calm. Is there something you need to tell me, Daniel? Silence. The pause stretched long enough to confirm everything she needed to know. Then, his voice, strained, hesitant. Yeah, it happened. Evelyn let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her entire body went numb, and then, just as quickly, the feeling returned in full force. A hurricane of betrayal, heartbreak, and a fury so violent she could taste it. You cheated on me. It wasn't a question. Evelyn, listen, it was a mistake, She hung up. Her mind raced. She stared at the wedding picture hanging on the wall. Lies. Their entire life had been a lie. The vows, the promises, the years of sacrifice, meant nothing. He had spit on them all for a moment of weakness with the woman he was supposed to have left behind. Something inside her snapped. Evelyn wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to beg for an explanation. No, this wasn't going to end with words. This was going to be war. Evelyn sat motionless, her breathing steady but her mind a whirlwind of chaos. The walls around her felt like they were closing in, suffocating her under the weight of betrayal. The air smelled of old memories, ones she had cherished, ones now poisoned beyond repair. The framed wedding photo on the mantel mocked her. Her fingers itched for destruction. She picked up the picture, tracing Daniel's face with her nails, and then, with a violent flick of her wrist, sent it crashing to the floor. Glass shattered across the wooden floor, shards scattering like the pieces of her broken trust. A deep rage boiled in her veins, not the kind that screamed and wailed, but the kind that brewed, cold and merciless. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. She let it ring. A second call. This time, she answered. What? Evelyn. Please, let me explain. His voice was desperate now. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake. She cut him off, her voice sharp enough to slit throats. You didn't mean to betray me? Didn't mean to crawl back to her? It wasn't like that. Daniel protested. We got caught up in the past. I was feeling alone, and Evelyn laughed, but it wasn't amusement. It was the kind of laughter that made people nervous. Oh, you were feeling alone? So that justified screwing your ex-wife. Silence. Evelyn could hear his breathing on the other end. Shallow. Uncertain. He was scared. Good. She inhaled deeply, forcing the storm inside her to remain controlled. Where are you right now? At work, he answered immediately. Liar. A beat of silence. Then, Evelyn, please, She hung up. She knew exactly where he was. Not at work. Not in some lonely bar, drowning in guilt. He was with her. And that thought sent something dark twisting inside her, something primal and vicious, something she didn't recognize in herself. Her eyes fell on the shattered glass at her feet, the reflection of herself distorted in the shards. She looked different, harder, colder. The kind of woman who didn't sit back and let men walk over her. The kind of woman who handled things. Evelyn grabbed her keys. She had to see it for herself. The truth. The betrayal. The filth. And if she found him there, if she caught him in the act, there would be no screaming, no crying, no more words. Only consequences. Evelyn drove through the dark streets, her grip on the steering wheel tightening with every passing second. The city lights blurred around her, a reflection of the chaos spiraling inside her mind. Aisha's house wasn't far. She had been there before, once, long ago, when Daniel had introduced her as his past. A lie. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she approached the neighborhood. The street was quiet, lined with houses where families slept soundly, unaware that one of them harbored a betrayal so deep it could drown them all. She parked 2 houses away, killing the engine. The night was silent, thick with tension, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then she saw it. Daniel's car, parked outside her house. For a moment, everything inside her stilled. She had known. Of course, she had known. But seeing it, proof, was different. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It wasn't a gut feeling. It was real, and it seared through her like molten steel. She stepped out of the car, the cool night air doing nothing to extinguish the fire inside her. She moved without hesitation, each step heavier than the last. The weight of betrayal was no longer something she carried. It was something she was about to unleash. The front door was closed, the windows dark, but she knew they were inside. She clenched her fists. Evelyn had never considered herself violent. But tonight was different. She walked up to the door and knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. A shadow moved behind the curtains. Then the door creaked open. Victoria stood there, wrapped in nothing but a silk robe, her long hair cascading down her shoulders. She looked startled, but only for a second. Then her lips curled into a slow, taunting smirk. "Evelyn," she purred. "Didn't expect to see you here." Evelyn's blood roared in her ears. The sheer audacity, the arrogance of this woman, made her want to claw that smirk off her face. "Where is he?" Evelyn's voice was sharp, controlled, a blade disguised as words. Victoria leaned against the doorframe. "Sleeping," she said, tilting her head. "I wore him out." Evelyn saw red. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. Her hand shot out, gripping Aisha's throat, shoving her back into the house. The door slammed behind them. Victoria gasped, her smirk wiped clean as Evelyn's fingers dug into her skin. "You think this is funny?" Evelyn hissed, shoving her against the wall. "You think I'm just going to walk away?" Victoria choked out a laugh. "He came to me, sweetheart." "What does that tell you?" Evelyn's grip tightened. Footsteps. Daniel's voice, groggy, confused. "Aisha? Who's it they?" Then he saw her. His face drained of color. "Evelyn." Too late. Because tonight, there would be no talking. Only reckoning. Daniel stood frozen in the dimly lit hallway, his shirt wrinkled, the collar open, evidence of exactly what he had been doing before Evelyn arrived. The scent of perfume lingered in the air, mingling with the sickly sweet stench of betrayal. His eyes darted from Evelyn's clenched jaw to Aisha, still pinned against the wall, her breath coming in short gasps beneath Evelyn's iron grip. "Evelyn, listen." She didn't. Evelyn didn't need to listen anymore. She had heard enough. Without a word, she let go of Victoria and turned, grabbing the glass vase from the nearby table. In one swift motion, she hurled it at Daniel. It shattered against his shoulder. He staggered back, cursing, but Evelyn wasn't done. She lunged. Her fist connected with his jaw, sending him crashing into the side table. The lamp toppled, glass and wood splintering around them. Victoria shrieked, backing away, but Evelyn didn't care. This wasn't about Aisha. This was about him. "You disgust me." Evelyn spat, her voice raw, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You were my husband. My life." She grabbed his collar, pulling him up just to slam him back down. "I sacrificed everything for you, and this is what I get." Daniel groaned, his hands fumbling to push her away, but Evelyn was relentless. She hit him again, and again. Each strike was a release of every sleepless night, every unanswered call, every time she had trusted him when she shouldn't have. "Stop," Daniel gasped, trying to shield himself. Blood trickled from his lip, staining his white shirt. But Evelyn didn't stop. Not when Victoria grabbed her arm. Not when Daniel begged. Not until she heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Her body stilled. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her, but there was no regret, no shame, only the satisfaction of watching Daniel, the man she had once loved, crumble before her. Victoria rushed to his side, pressing a cloth to his bleeding lip, but Evelyn could see it in her eyes. Fear. Good. Let them fear her. The flashing red and blue lights painted the room in eerie colors as tires screeched to a halt outside. A fist pounded against the door. This is the police. Open up. Evelyn straightened, wiping the sweat from her brow. She took one last look at Daniel, bruised and bloody on the floor, and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Then, slowly, she walked to the door and opened it. The night wasn't over yet. The moment Evelyn opened the door, the cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and burning asphalt. Red and blue lights flashed against her skin, illuminating the chaos behind her. Two officers stood at the threshold, their hands hovering near their holsters. Their eyes flickered between her calm expression and the wreckage inside. Shattered glass, broken furniture, and Daniel, slumped on the floor, blood dripping from his lip. "Ma'am, we received a disturbance call. Step outside," one of the officers ordered, his voice firm. Evelyn lifted her hands, palms open, as if surrendering. But she wasn't surrendering. Not really. She was letting go. Aisha's voice cut through the tension, shrill and panicked. "She attacked him. She broke in and attacked us." Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't turn to look at Aisha. She didn't need to. She could feel the woman's fear, taste the desperation in her trembling words. Daniel groaned from the floor, his face a mask of pain and humiliation. He wiped his bleeding mouth with the back of his hand and managed to choke out, "I don't want to press charges." Victoria spun toward him, disbelief etched into her face. "Are you kidding me? Look at yourself. Look at this mess." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, we still need a statement. We got multiple reports of yelling and what sounded like violence." His gaze hardened as he looked at Evelyn. "Ma'am, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Evelyn exhaled slowly, her heartbeat steady. Then, she smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made even the officers shift uncomfortably. "I walked in on my husband cheating," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "I reacted." The officer sighed, exchanging a look with his partner. "That's not how the law works, ma'am. You can't just—" "Daniel," Evelyn interrupted, stepping closer, ignoring the way the officers tensed. She crouched in front of him, her eyes dark with something unspoken. "Tell them the truth." His throat bobbed. For a long, painful moment, the room was silent. Then he spoke. "She didn't break in," he muttered, avoiding everyone's gaze. "She's my wife." Victoria let out a frustrated noise, but Daniel continued, his voice hoarse. "I don't want to press charges. It was a domestic argument. That's all." Evelyn watched him, searching his face. She saw guilt, shame, fear. Not just of her, but of what he had done. The officers exchanged another glance before one of them sighed. "All right, but if we get another call here, someone will be leaving in handcuffs." "Understood." Evelyn didn't respond. She just turned and walked past them, stepping out into the night, the scent of rain washing over her. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. This chapter was over. But the war wasn't. Not yet. Evelyn walked away from the house, her heart pounding but her steps steady. The cold night air wrapped around her like a shroud, washing away the heat of battle. Behind her, the police officers lingered, their radios crackling, their presence a reminder that tonight had not gone unnoticed. She didn't care. The betrayal had already burned through her like wildfire, leaving only steel in its place. As she reached her car, her hands trembled, not from fear, not from regret, but from the sheer adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The image of Daniel, bloody and broken, clinging to his pride, replayed in her mind. Good. She had made her mark. The driver's seat felt unfamiliar, like she was stepping into a new reality, one where she was no longer a wife, no longer a fool blinded by love. She gripped the steering wheel, exhaling slowly, her body aching from the storm she had unleashed. But then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A message. From an unknown number. That was just the beginning. "You should have killed him when you had the chance." Evelyn's blood ran cold. She sat there, staring at the words, the weight of them pressing against her like a vice. Someone had been watching. Someone knew. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she didn't panic. No. A slow, dark smile curled at the corner of her lips. This wasn't over. Not yet. Because if someone wanted to play this game, she would win. The end or the beginning.